Well, a new report warns Ontario is facing increased homelessness, a strain on healthcare, and community instability.
Feed Ontario's 2025 Hunger Report, which just came out this morning, reveals that more than 1 million people relied on food banks last year. That's the 9th consecutive year of growth and the highest level of demand on record. Also, 1 in 3 people visited a food bank for the first time, and a third of users were children. 2/3 of food banks are also worried they won't be able to sustain their operations over the next 6 months. Let's talk more about this report this morning, joined live by Carolyn Stewart-Stockwell from Feed Ontario. Carolyn, appreciate your time this morning. Yet another example here of how problematic, the situation is for people turning to food banks time and time again. 9th consecutive year of growth and concerns that food banks, won't be able to keep up this year. The numbers seem very dire, but how concerned are you about this potential food banks not being able to keep up in the next 6 months?
We're very concerned. What we're seeing is really a deepening of poverty with the affordability crisis growing, with so many more families moving from just getting by to barely holding on. And that's being really reflected in our food bank use across the province. 2/3 of them are worried about making sure that they have sufficient resources to keep their doors open for the next 6 months. Many are reducing the types of services that they provide, whether that be cutting wraparound support or even shifting service from, once a week to every other week so that they can support the number of people that are visiting their doors. And so I think what's really concerning for us, and which we outline in the report, is that if food banks fail, the consequences are going to be significant, because people turn to food banks after they've exhausted all their other options, whether that be incurring debt or asking friends or family for assistance. And so when there's nowhere left to turn, they turn to food banks. But if we can't provide the level of support that they need, then we're going to see some of the province's most pressing issues get worse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and those pressing issues are quite interconnected here, especially when you look at the correlation that the report kind of points out to between hunger and homelessness, and also hunger and healthcare. But I think the concerning one as well is hunger and community well-being. It kind of has this domino effect where when you see these increased uses of food banks, it's kind of the predecessor to a lot of these other societal issues that you're pointing out, correct?
Yeah, most definitely. I think it's very easy to understand that strong communities really start when everyone's basic needs are being met. But when that doesn't happen and we see increased levels of poverty like we're seeing right now, it weakens communities. It erodes the trust that people have in the institutions and systems that are really supposed to be there to support them and help them in these difficult times. And so when people are feeling that disconnection, and it really becomes harder to sustain and build safe and affordable neighborhoods. And when people have what they need to thrive, communities thrive too. I think that's very easy to understand. But when people don't have hope or that social connection to one another, or they're desperately trying to make sure that their children stay fed, their thinking and decisions aren't necessarily supporting the greater good of community. And we're seeing that in the results of higher food insecurity, increased levels of homelessness, increased levels of strain on the healthcare system, and deepening levels of poverty all across Ontario.
Absolutely. Okay, well, we'll talk more about these numbers in the coming days here. Carolyn Stewart-Stockwell from Feed Ontario. Appreciate this morning. Thanks for helping us understand the situation a little better.